news source.
The consoler-in-chief, making sure those impacted by the tornadoes know the government is there for them. Today, the president paying a visit to Kentucky, getting an up-close look at the devastation there. Communities still struggling to salvage what they can days after that devastating round of tornadoes leveled so many homes. Tonight, the major concern about more December tornadoes as this strong system leaves behind flash floods and mudslides in California and now takes aim at the devastated heartland. Rob Marciano is timing it all out. The highly transmissible Omicron variant is spreading fast. A surge of new cases now threatens to push more hospitals to the breaking point once again. Dr. Anthony Fauci is confident America's booster vaccine regimens work against Omicron, suggesting, quote, at this point, there is no need for a variant-specific booster. But what steps do you need to be taking? And what about the holidays? Tonight, 4 months after the collapse of Afghanistan, our Ian panel back on the ground in Kabul with rare access to top Taliban officials. Is the country collapsing right before our eyes? And in the midst of it all, the defiance, the secret classes making sure little girls still have a chance to learn.
It's an incredible thing to witness. There are a dozen girls here, all teenagers. At the moment, they're doing math. They're also learning English. The only way they can do it is by doing it in secret, in private, and risking the wrath of the Taliban.
Your money tonight. The Federal Reserve announces steps to slow down inflation, including the prospect of higher interest rates. Our Rebecca Jarvis is standing by for what it all means for you. And tonight, the scientists who believe there's water on Mars, and they now say they know where to find it. And introducing the world to Afrobeats, one song at a time. Meet the artists making sure millions are hearing the music they love.
Afrobeats is, I would say, is my heritage as an African. It's literally part of my blood.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. We begin tonight with the Omicron surge and the increasing number of cases nationwide. Health officials now say if you are vaccinated but not boosted, you may be at a higher risk of a breakthrough infection. We are seeing an increasing number of cases among vaccinated students in professional sports and in communities across the country. And even though some scientists are suggesting Omicron cases may be milder, there's substantial concern about just how quickly it's spreading and how it could still overwhelm hospitals with the unvaccinated and our most vulnerable. Already exhausted doctors in Wisconsin tell ABC News there are simply not enough beds. There's not enough staff. Many in the medical field say all of this is driving home the importance of booster shots. Today, Dr. Fauci said 2 doses of Pfizer or Moderna may not offer enough protection from Omicron, but a booster shot restores those high levels of antibodies. Roughly 1 million Americans are now getting boosters each day, and cities are gearing up to open mass vaccination sites once again. Our Stephanie Ramos leads us off tonight.
With the Omicron variant now racing across the U.S., Dr. Anthony Fauci today trying to reassure Americans that we already have the weapon to fight it.
Our booster vaccine regimens work against Omicron. At this point, there is no need for a variant-specific booster.
Dr. Fauci pointing to new research on the power of boosters. Lab studies of Pfizer and Moderna vaccines show Omicron significantly reduces antibody protection after just 2 doses, but a 3rd dose restores high levels of antibodies. The White House COVID team asked today how worried Americans should be about Omicron.
If we didn't have these tools, I would be telling you to really be worried. But we have tools. So get vaccinated, get boosted.
The Omicron variant detected in at least 36 states now makes up about 3% of cases nationwide, and as much as 13% in New York, New Jersey, and Washington state, where cases are doubling every day, pushing some people to get that shot.
I'm going to go ahead and get vaccinated. I think it's especially with the variant.
The number of COVID cases at Cornell University, now more than 900, many thought to be Omicron, pushing that college and others like Princeton and NYU to move final exams online. And even if Omicron is not more severe, as early data suggests, experts worry a spike in infections will send more people into hospitals that are already under siege. With reported outbreaks among vaccinated college students, doctors at New York's Long Island Jewish Medical Center are bracing for more of a spike in cases.
What are some of your concerns going into winter?
As people now are gathering for the holidays and being inside, these new variants spread very easily. We know they're very contagious, much more contagious than Delta even. We know that there are lots of super spreader events in colleges right now that are happening. So all those college kids are going to come home and spread COVID to their families.
It comes as more than 100 athletes across professional football, basketball, and hockey teams tested positive this week for COVID or were exposed. More than 70 NFL players alone, including Cleveland Browns quarterback Baker Mayfield, along with his head coach, and LA Rams wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr.
There's been a substantial increase in our positive cases over the past several days. And I think this reflects that we're entering a new phase of the pandemic.
Stephanie Ramos joins us now. Stephanie, even if this Omicron variant is not more severe, health officials are very concerned about the sheer number of cases growing because it's so transmissible. What's the latest CDC forecast say?
Well, right now, the CDC is estimating that another 45,000 people could lose their lives by January 8th, with many states expecting to see an increase in hospitalizations and deaths. But they are watching this variant closely, and they are saying in the next few weeks we could see a lot more people lose their lives, Lindsay.
All right, Stephanie Ramos, our thanks to you. Now to the dangerous new weather threat tonight, the tornado watch in 6 states. Several twisters reported already in Nebraska, winds up to 60 miles an hour. A rare outbreak of severe weather so far north, so late in the year, and just days after that devastation in the heartland. Senior meteorologist Rob Marciano is tracking it all for us. Good evening, Rob.
Hi, Lindsay. Another powerful system cutting into the heartland, and we've got severe weather that could easily produce some tornadoes, life-threatening conditions over the next several hours in a very rare event. The center of the low itself is over Nebraska. That's where we've seen winds, straight-line winds, over 90 miles an hour. Kansas has seen over 80-mile-an-hour winds, and there you see the line getting towards Des Moines with a number of tornado warnings posted within that line, and the tornado watch has now been extended to include Minneapolis. A tornado in Minnesota would be unprecedented for the month of December. All right, these are all the weather alerts as far as wind and snow is concerned. We've got blizzard warnings on the backside of this thing, and winter storm warnings all the way into California, and the wind alerts extend all the way into northern New York. What's causing the severe weather? Much like what we saw last week, record-breaking heat at ahead of this front. Temperatures 30, 40 degrees in some cases above average. So that's what's fueling the storms tonight. But the wind energy and the bulk of the wind energy with the low will go into Canada tomorrow. So that's where the severe weather will begin to end. But the front, as it approaches the areas that got hit with a tornado, east of St. Louis, down into Mayfield and Bowling Green and parts of Kentucky and Arkansas, it stalls, it lays down over this area. Tomorrow, Friday and Saturday, several days, several rounds of rain where they're trying to recover from devastating tornadoes. Not what this area needs. Lindsay?
Certainly adding insult to injury there, and 100 million Americans on some kind of alert. Rob, our thanks to you.
You bet.
And now to that deadly tornado disaster. Today, President Biden toured some of the hardest hit areas in Mayfield, Kentucky, and promised federal help now and for the long haul. Also tonight, the National Weather Service has released its preliminary finding that one tornado was on the ground for 128 miles across western Kentucky with peak winds of 190 miles per hour. Here's ABC's Elwin Lopez reporting once again from Kentucky.
Tonight, with this region bracing for heavy rain on the way, President Biden on the ground in Kentucky, surveying the damage in Mayfield and Dawson Springs, meeting with families saying he's never seen destruction like this. More than 70 lives lost in the state. The governor breaking down as he introduced the president.
And I never thought in my life I'd be able to introduce a president, and I wish there were different circumstances.
And the president acknowledging the pain and suffering in the community.
I met one couple on the way up, said they're still looking for 4 of their friends. They don't know where they are. And those who lost someone, there's no words for the pain of losing someone. A lot of us know it.
Announcing the federal government will cover 100% of the cost of all emergency work for the next 30 days.
To all the families here, keep the faith. We're going to get this done, I promise you. No one's walking away. We're in this for the long haul.
The president really showing his commitment to this community. Elwin Lopez joins us now. Elwin, we saw the president there consoling people, promising more help. How was this message received by the communities where you are?
Lindsay, I spoke to the mayor of Mayfield not too long ago, and she said the first thing the president did was open his arms and give her a hug, something that she said she definitely needed during this time. Here in the community, we've been speaking to people, and they say that they welcome the president's visit. Their biggest concern right now is to get not only immediate help, but help in the long run. Lindsay?
Understandably so. Elwin Lopez, our thanks to you.
Thank you.
For more now, we bring in Keith Turry, FEMA Assistant Administrator for Recovery. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on what we know is very precious time. And we can also imagine that your work is so difficult and emotionally taxing. What are the most alarming things that you've seen during this tornado disaster?
Well, first and foremost, I think you just have to start with the loss of life. Obviously, in every disaster scenario, the goal of all levels of government is to try to prevent loss of life. And unfortunately, there was a significant loss of life in this disaster. We at FEMA and all of our partners, our hearts go out to those that are suffering a loss. And our FEMA administrator was on the ground today to reinsure our commitment to be with the people of Kentucky in the days and months ahead as they move towards their recovery.
And the governor of Kentucky said today that there are hundreds of families still being sheltered in state park facilities. What's next for these residents, and when can they expect to go home, if their home still exists, or find a new one?
Yeah, well, the recovery process can be long. First and foremost, our focus with our partners is making sure that everyone is safe. They have a safe place to stay. They have a safe place to shelter. They have food and water. The president's disaster declaration that he declared on Sunday allowed for FEMA to start providing assistance to individuals. We've opened up our registration, and survivors can register at disasterassistance.gov. They can call 1-800-621-3362, or they can use the FEMA mobile app to register. Once they register, we'll be able to have an inspector contact them to assess what their needs are and start helping with things like temporary housing assistance, funding for repairs, or funding for replacements of their home. FEMA assistance isn't a replacement for insurance, but we can help survivors get on their feet, and we'll be working closely with the state and local governments on what options are available for sheltering as they continue the process towards recovery.
We've also been talking about the large number of people still unaccounted for. In your experience in disasters like this, when might we learn more? Is there still hope of more rescues at this point?
Well, it's a challenging situation. Obviously, we have 4 of our federal urban search and rescue teams that are on the ground in Kentucky working with the state and local rescue teams. They're going to continue to do their work until they believe that they've completed it. I'll let them and the state speak to what the timing of those rescue efforts are, but FEMA's committed to provide support for as long as needed.
And just today, President Biden said he's never seen so much tornado damage. Would you say the same? And how does this compare to other disasters that you've worked in?
Yeah, there are obviously, we've unfortunately had some significant tornadoes in our history. You look at Joplin, Missouri, the Alabama tornadoes that impacted Tuscaloosa, but this one is right up there in terms of the level of devastation. And we know it wasn't just Kentucky. There were other states that were impacted as well. And so the FEMA team are working with our partners across the states to try to provide as much support as we can. And again, we'll be there for the long haul.
When we cover disasters like this, we often hear concerns that people will forget about these struggling communities as soon as the news cycle moves on. Tell us more about what these residents will need longer term in the weeks and months to come, and how long will FEMA be there providing help?
Yeah, it is a long process. Obviously, you start with ensuring the incident is stable, that people have a safe place to be, and then we move on to issues of community recovery and individual recovery. That includes finding housing solutions, helping the community get its infrastructure back up, and helping the community rebuild in a way that works for them. You know, sometimes after disasters, communities they don't return to exactly what they were before. They return to something new, and that's what our goal and effort will be, to support them on. FEMA will be with this community for years to come in terms of supporting them, not only with their temporary housing needs, but their infrastructure rebuilding and helping them throughout the entire process.
A long road ahead, that is to be sure. Keith Turry, we thank you so much for your time. All the best to you.
Great, thank you.
Former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin pled guilty today to violating George Floyd's civil rights as part of a plea deal in federal court. Chauvin is already serving 22 and a half years on state charges in Floyd's death. ABC's Alex Perez has the very latest.
Tonight, an about-face from former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin. No cameras in the courtroom. Chauvin changing his plea to guilty on federal charges that he deprived George Floyd of his rights to be free from unreasonable seizure and to unreasonable use of force by a police officer that led to Floyd's death. A jury found 45-year-old Chauvin guilty on state criminal charges for Floyd's death back in April.
Find the defendant guilty.
Chauvin was sentenced to 22 and a half years in that case. Chauvin in June seeming to allude to today's plea deal.
My condolences to the Floyd family. There's going to be some other information in the future that would be of interest, and I hope things will give you some peace of mind.
Also part of today's federal plea deal, Chauvin admitting guilt in a separate 2017 case where he allegedly kneeled on the back and neck of a handcuffed 14-year-old who survived. George Floyd's loved ones reacting outside the court today.
Today he had a chance to blow kisses and give air hugs to his family. We can't do that to our loved one who's not here.
Alex Perez joins us now. Alex, explain why Chauvin may have made this guilty plea.
Well, Lindsay, federal prosecutors are recommending after this plea deal a 25-year sentence for Chauvin that would run concurrently with his state sentence. That's 22 and a half years. So we're talking about an additional 2.5 years. Had he gone to trial on these federal charges, he could have faced life in prison. Lindsay?
Makes sense. Okay, Alex Perez, our thanks to you. And when we come back, the treasure trove of information related to the assassination of JFK, the secrets kept for decades. Why Afrobeats is now tearing up the charts here in the U.S. with songs from years ago. Our conversation with two of the genre's biggest artists right now. But up next, our Ian panel back in Afghanistan several months after the Taliban reclaimed power. The growing hunger crisis there. Next.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any place else. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast, now streaming on ABC News Live.
It was a scary time. In the 70s, you had multiple bodies showing up in Los Angeles.
There were so many murders happening. You had to have a name for it, serial killer.
There was a human head in there. This was premeditated evil.
You have this clock. This person is going to do this again.
It's me against the killer. Who's going to win?
We'll see who laughs last.
What came next was unlike anything they had ever seen.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
I risked my life. I put my family in danger. If I was caught, they would have put a bullet in my head. But it was the right thing to do. It was the only thing to do.
Terror plot foiled in Garden City, Kansas.
That would have been one of the most deadly acts of domestic terrorism ever in the United States.
It would have been Oklahoma City.
He put his family, himself in jeopardy for us.
24 hours, Assault on the Capitol, the ABC News original, exclusively on Hulu, now streaming. This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move out. Let's move out.
We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run with...
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
National parks are incredibly safe places, but crime will happen.
Hey,
Hi, Mama. My wife is fallen. She's in really critical condition.
At that time, I thought it was just a tragic accident.
There's still a lot of questions we need to ask.
There were small things that didn't totally add up.
This is 2 lives for Harold that have died now. I was shocked. Something's not right.
Welcome back. Turning overseas now, 4 months after the messy U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, a mix of sanctions, drought, and terrorism has brought Afghanistan once again to the brink of collapse. ABC's senior foreign correspondent Ian Pannell is back in the country, and what he found is a humanitarian crisis that is growing by the day.
Welcome to the new Afghanistan, where Taliban flags flutter over the city markets and murals with the slogans, "With the help of God, our nation defeated America," painted along the city walls. But 4 months after the US withdrawal, the country's collapsing before our eyes, whether or not we choose to see it. The militants who took over are struggling to control a growing ISIS insurgency and a rapidly unfolding humanitarian crisis. The last time we were at Kabul airport, it was controlled by the US military. But today, it's these fighters, the Taliban, armed with US-made M4 rifles. However, having forced the Americans and NATO to withdraw from the country, they're now having to battle an insurgency of their own against ISIS. We sat down with Taliban Badri commander Malawi Mohammed Salim Saad to discuss their looming crisis.
What is the problem here? Why are things so bad right now?
No, it needs more time. We will have a good government, but it needs more time.
The economy's tanking. Banks are closed or limiting access to funds. Foreign aid from the US, Europe and others that kept the country afloat has largely been frozen. Salaries are unpaid and unemployment is through the roof. Men like Jawad are reduced to ruin. A former student at Kabul University, he's been waiting outside every day for the past 3 months, hoping just to get some work.
At night, I am crying. Because of that there is no one to listen to us. What should I do? I don't know about my future.
Mass unemployment exacerbates a growing hunger crisis. Thousands of Afghans line up throughout Kabul for food, like this former shop owner. It's his 3rd time coming to this food distribution center. According to the UN, as many as 90% of the population could face poverty by next year. But hunger and starvation are already here. According to the UN, 55% of the population faces extreme levels of hunger, and for one of its most vulnerable populations, children, they warn 1 million could starve to death this winter. The Indira Gandhi Hospital is the only one in the country dedicated to caring for children. Its wards are now overrun with malnourished children, emaciated and sick, with bloated bellies and limbs, so young and yet already fighting for their lives. It's difficult to watch, but their lives may depend on the world not turning away. This hospital was completely reliant on foreign aid, but international communities are refusing to provide financial assistance directly to the Taliban, and it's the weakest who suffer the most. And toddlers like Mohammed Chakri are unable to get the treatment they need.
Little Mohammed here is absolutely tiny. He's 2 years old. He weighs just about 11 to 12 pounds. He should weigh something much closer to around 30. He's just skin and bone. His mother doesn't have the money to get the medicine that he needs, and the UN says it's about to get much worse.
Some staff have even used their own money to help pay for patient fees. But many hospital workers have also gone without salaries for 4 months, and they too are desperate for money. One of the reasons assets are frozen is the Taliban's treatment of women and girls. Many women have been forced out of their jobs, and of the 4.2 million young Afghans already out of school, 60% of them are girls. The mural on the wall outside the now closed Ministry for Women says it all. Black paint sprayed over the mouth of a woman daring to proclaim freedom. Zahra Nabi is a journalist in Kabul. She used to have a staff of 50 at her studios. But since the Taliban took over, she's the last one still working. Zahra spends her time documenting the untold stories of women around the country.
Explain why you didn't leave.
For me, it's really boring to sit somewhere and just wait. And it's really kill me. It's better to be in the field of war instead of to sit at some peace place and just watching what's going on. It's really, for me, it's really hard.
Afghanistan's her homeland. And despite the dangers and being offered a visa in Europe, she refuses to leave.
I really worked very hard to achieve this, at least. The community will accept me. So it couldn't make me like only these things. It couldn't make me go back.
But for most women, like Satara, their dreams are dead. And working and studying now remains out of the question.
This was your show?
Yes.
Satara used to be an anchor for a local news channel, Bano TV. It was shut down when the Taliban came to town.
One day you will do this again.
I don't think. ما پیشترم گفتم که اگر شرایط همه قسم باشه دیگه چون رسانه ما کاملا بسته شد همه تیت و پراگنده شدن دیگه فکر نمیکنم که ما به روزای خود دوباره بر بگردم.
Satara and her 13-year-old sister Zahra, who was deemed too old to go to school, are now trapped inside their home, rarely venturing out anymore, and playing with her friends, now a thing of the past.
What would you say to children your age elsewhere in the world? What would you tell them about what life is like in Afghanistan today?
احساس می است که درس خدا بخوانن تا که به جای برسن وطن خدا آباد کنن.
Why is that your message?
به خاطر که ما سر خود تجربه کردیم مکتب نیست آدم بسیار دق میاره و نمیتونه از خانه برای
But in a rare act of defiance, some underground schools are springing up. Classes being held in secret. Even in the darkness, a small light still glows.
This is an incredible thing to witness. There are a dozen girls here, all teenagers. At the moment, they're doing math. They're also learning English. The kind of things that everyone's kids take for granted. The only way they can do it is by doing it in secret, in private, and risking the wrath of the Taliban. This is illegal. Why are you running a school and risking everything?
من آسیا احمدی هستم کارمند دولت هم بودم و گویندم بودم در یک تلویزیون و همچنان کارشناس در مسائل حقوقی و شهری خانم ها هم بودم در تلویزیون ها.
Are you worried by coming to school?
A little because of Taliban.
But why do you come?
I want to become a good doctor in the future and I want to continue my education because when fall old government and become new regime to now schools are closed and girls cannot go to school. Of course, we want to read.
But hope is a dwindling force here as the weather closes in and hunger stalks the land. For many, the winter ahead promises to be a long, dark and desperate battle simply to stay alive.
So much uncertainty and so much at stake. Ian Pannell joins us now. Ian, you've certainly been in and out of Afghanistan for much of the last 2 decades. Does the Taliban seem different than the group that the U.S. kicked out of power 20 years ago?
I mean, on one level, it doesn't seem different. I think that's part of the problem. This is an organization that was equipped for the last century rather than this century, and Afghanistan has changed dramatically in the last 20 years. Crucially, it's not equipped financially. 75% of all public expenditure in the last government was effectively paid for by the US taxpayer and other taxpayers. That money has now been frozen. Around $10 billion in assets that belonged to the last Afghan government has also been frozen. So this is a government that effectively has no budget and can't meet the needs of the people. On one level, they're quite naive in the way that they appeal to the United States and the international community to come to their aid. They don't seem to recognize that they won't get that legitimacy because they came to power through the barrel of the gun. And until those two things are met, it's the people on the ground that will suffer. And I think the challenge tonight for the international community is how much do you hold out, hoping that the Taliban will make concessions, will change, and risk the impact that that's going to have on vulnerable children like little Mohammed that we saw in the report there.
And so critical that you are shining a light on those young people there. Ian, thank you so much to you and also the team for your outstanding reporting. Still ahead here on Prime, the major discovery found on Mars. With that moratorium now over evictions over, now that the moratorium on evictions is over, we take a look by the numbers. But first, our tweet of the day from Cornell West, paying tribute to trailblazing author and activist Bell Hooks, the author of dozens of books focusing on race, gender, and sexuality. Bell Hooks' real name was Gloria Jean Watkins. She was 69 years old.
It was an extraordinary story.
A computer salesman was supposed to report to prison to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one thought he would run.
How do you evade capture for 25 years? How do you do that?
Now, join the search, following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover new leads in a global manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join the all-new hunt wherever you get your podcasts.
It was a scary time.
In the 70s, you had multiple bodies showing up in Los Angeles.
There were so many murders happening. You had to have a name for it, serial killer.
There was a human head in there. This was premeditated evil.
You have this clock. This person is going to do this again.
It's me against the killer. Who's going to win?
We'll see who laughs last.
What came next was unlike anything they had ever seen.
World News Now.
And America This Morning.
The best new videos.
Breaking news overnight.
Your money and concerns about inflation.
The pandemic is not over.
The stories people are talking about.
You don't want to shave your legs? Don't. I was going to say. And what to expect in the day ahead.
From the top of the world, baby! ABC World News Now and America This Morning.
Weekday morning starting at 2 a.m. Eastern.
Up all night to keep you up to date.
Right now, with so much at stake, Sunday mornings, this is the place. Taking on all the tough questions, straightforward reporting, no spin, no hype, no bull. See why Sunday mornings, more and more Americans are now turning first to ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos.
Welcome to This Week.
When you wake up in the morning, when you wake up in the morning, darling, I'll be by your side. I'll be there by your side. I'll be everything you wanted. I'll be there by your side. If you need a light to shine in, hold up your hand, let the stars shoot again, let the light shine in through the dark.
Good morning, America.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're going to move back. Let's move back.
We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run with...
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us. Welcome back, everyone. We turn now to evictions in the U.S. Of course, we're still in this pandemic, but the federal CDC eviction moratorium ended back in August. And now evictions are on the rise. We take a look by the numbers. Evictions increased more than 10% from August to September, according to the eviction lab at Princeton University. Then they rose another 25% from September to October, and from August to October, evictions have shot up 38%. Experts say that part of this surge is due to the courts finally catching up on the backlog of eviction cases that had been paused, and rising housing prices have also played a role. Another issue is that some localities have not distributed their share of the $46.5 billion in federal emergency rental assistance. According to one report, 28% of states and localities have spent less than 30% of what they were allocated and may lose those funds. Meanwhile, according to the census, 6.3 million Americans say they are not confident that they can make next month's rent. And we still have lots to get to here on Prime tonight. The grand jury report released in the investigation into that horrific building collapse in Surfside, Florida, what it says. The skull and bones discovered in a trash bag and how police tied it back to a member of a popular R&B group from the 70s and 80s. And our conversation with Keanu Reeves. But first, a look at our top trending stories on abcnews.com.
Powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
It's an extraordinary story.
A computer salesman was supposed to report to prison to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one thought he would run.
How do you evade capture for 25 years? How do you do that?
Now, join the search, following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover new leads in a global manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join the all-new hunt wherever you get your podcasts.
Now streaming on ABC News Live 2020. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime 2020. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
National parks are incredibly safe places, but crime will happen.
My wife has fallen. She's in really critical condition.
At that time, I thought it was just a tragic accident.
There's still a lot of questions we need to ask.
There were small things that didn't totally add up.
This is 2 lives for Harold that have died now. I was shocked. Something's not right.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
I know what happened, and I'm not guilty.
Why the fascination with criminal trials? Figure out what's really out there.
She revealed she had murdered his family.
I know in my heart that he did this. It's the time of suspicion.
The ending's really tough.
You don't know whether truth is going to be difficult to find unless you try to find it.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back.
We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
With cases of the COVID-19 Omicron variant rising across much of the globe, the World Health Organization now out with this warning.
Omicron is spreading at a rate we have not seen with any previous variant.
Health experts here at home looking at those numbers, telling Americans to brace for an uptick in Omicron cases here.
Early data suggests that Omicron is more transmissible than Delta, with a doubling time of about 2 days.
Omicron infections in the U.S. have jumped 7-fold in just the past week. Dr. Anthony Fauci saying it will certainly become the dominant COVID strain in the U.S. Symptoms appear to be mild, but Omicron has managed to infect those who have been vaccinated.
Booster vaccine regimens work against Omicron.
According to federal data, more than 67,000 Americans are hospitalized with COVID, with most of those being the Delta variant. With winter just days away, hospitals across the country are facing the pressure of an influx of COVID patients. In Wisconsin, just 3% of ICU beds are available.
We're exhausted by picking up extra shifts and extra patients when our colleagues become sick themselves.
Time is running out for Democrats to meet their own deadline to pass the president's Build Back Better bill before Christmas. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi today during her weekly briefing remained hopeful that the Senate can get it done, saying talks are ongoing with moderate holdout Senator Joe Manchin.
I think we will have the legislation and it will pass. I hope the sooner the better, especially since we have certain deadlines. And I respect the process and I respect Senator Manchin.
A grand jury report released today addressing the deadly Surfside, Florida building collapse from June, which killed 98 people. The Miami-Dade state attorney said the report concluded that, quote, steps could have and should have been taken to maintain the structural integrity of the 40-year-old Champlain Towers South building. The report said the statute overseeing condos in Florida desperately needs revision, and that state and local governments need to focus more on maintaining the structural integrity of Florida's condominium units.
In the public housing project where she grew up, New York's next mayor introduced his police commissioner, Keishant Sewell.
But I'm particularly proud of the historic choice we have made, our first women police commissioner.
New York City's next police commissioner will be a black woman. Mayor-elect Eric Adams is set to nominate Nassau County Chief of Detectives Keishant Sewell when he takes over on January 1st.
There's been a nationwide loss of trust in police after protests over so many police-involved deaths. And morale in the department is the lowest it's been in years.
As Mayor-elect Adams has said, I will have the backs of my officers, but they must have the backs of the public. I will hold our officers accountable.
Police in Ohio were shocked when DNA identified the victim of a nearly 40-year-old unsolved murder as a former guitarist for the R&B group the OJs. Police say workers found a skull in a garbage bag filled with bones in Twinsburg in 1982. Detectives tried unsuccessfully to ID the man for decades, but then the DNA Doe Project got involved and uploaded DNA from a tooth and femur to a genealogical website in October, and that matched with a sample from Frank Little Jr.'s brother. Little vanished in the 1970s. In the 1960s, he wrote songs and played guitar for the OJs.
To that discovery on Mars, scientists now say they have found, quote, significant amounts of water, likely in the form of ice, hidden under the surface of a major canyon, 5 times deeper than the Grand Canyon.
We turn now to the economy, and the Federal Reserve's announcement today aimed at tackling the problem of inflation as it begins to take steps to raise interest rates in the next year. ABC's chief business and economics correspondent Rebecca Jarvis joins us now. Rebecca, explain what the Federal Reserve plans to do in the coming months and how it could impact inflation.
So, Linz, what they're planning to do here is hike interest rates 3 times next year, starting very likely in the early spring. And the idea, the goal of hiking interest rates is to slow spending down by making the cost of borrowing more expensive. Everything from a new mortgage to an auto loan to your credit cards, and also to make it more advantageous to save money, to stash money away in the bank. The idea here is the economy is overheated. By pulling back some of that demand, Lindsay, that puts a little bit of pressure on prices so they stop going up so dramatically.
Great explanation there. And also Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell recently stopped using the word transitory to describe inflation. So how long does the Fed still see the problem of rising prices lasting?
They're forecasting that prices will continue rising through next year, but that the problem won't be as severe, as in we'll see the increases occur, but they will be less so, particularly when they're compared to year over year. We're running right now at 39-year highs. It isn't, according to their projections, going to feel like that next year, Lindsay.
All right, well, at least there's that. All right, Rebecca Jarvis, our thanks to you. Yeah. We turn next to the National Archives releasing a batch of files related to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, including memos from CIA officers and details of Lee Harvey Oswald's meeting with a KGB agent 2 months before the fatal shooting. So what did the documents show? Terry Moran reports.
58 years from that fateful day in Dallas, and today, new clues, new questions. Among the documents released today, CIA memos discussing Lee Harvey Oswald's trips to the Soviet and Cuban embassies in Mexico City months before President Kennedy was killed. One of those CIA memos, written the day after the assassination, says Oswald communicated with an identified KGB officer while at the Soviet embassy that September. Oswald, who was married to a Russian, was trying to get visas to move to Russia. Another new document, a tip from a U.S. official in Australia 2 days after the assassination. An anonymous call to the embassy from a man claiming to be a chauffeur for Soviet diplomats who said the Soviets had probably financed the assassination. The memo noting a similar call had been made a year prior. The documents show that American officials in Australia dismissed both calls as crank calls.
Terry Moran joins us now. Terry, even after this batch, there's still more documents that the U.S. government has not yet released?
There are, believe it or not, Lindsay. So for a long time, for decades, the government kept much of its underlying documentation for the Warren Commission's claim that Lee Oswald killed John F. Kennedy by himself secret because the Soviet Union was still in existence. And they wanted to protect sources there. But the Soviet Union's been gone for 30 years. President Biden, when he came into office, and President Trump pushed as well, said, clean house, let's get them all out there. And so there are still thousands of documents that one security agency or another has objections to. President Biden ordered a review of all those documents to be released in a year, for potential release in a year. At the end of the day, they aren't going to change many minds. The JFK assassination was kind of like Facebook way before Facebook. Everybody does their own research, right? And no amount of facts is going to change anybody's opinion. The formal decision at the end of the day, the Warren Commission has never been completely overturned. Lee Oswald shot John Kennedy. Why? Why do people shoot up schools? At the end of the day, he was probably that kind of guy more than a Soviet agent or something like that. Lindsay?
Fitting analogy about Facebook there. All right, Terry Moran, our thanks to you. Next to the ever-popular Keanu Reeves, jumping back into the Matrix after nearly 20 years. ABC's Michael Strahan got the chance to sit down with the star as he returns for the highly anticipated fourth movie in the franchise, The Matrix Resurrections.
I remember this. His career has spanned more than 3 decades.
Yes way, Ted!
From roles like high school rocker Ted Theodore Logan.
Party on, dudes!
To the fierce John Wick.
I'll kill them. I'll kill them all.
And his most mysterious role, Neo from The Matrix.
I know Kung Fu.
Now, for the first time in nearly 20 years, Reeves is heading back into The Matrix.
Am I crazy? We don't use that word in here.
You play some characters that are iconic, that so many of us like. Do you have a favorite?
A favorite? Oh my gosh.
I know it's hard when you've been in 68 films to pick a favorite.
I would say that The Matrix changed my life.
When you're walking down the street, do people come up to you and recite their favorite lines from any of your movies?
Yeah, sometimes. I did a film called Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. I played Ted Theodore Logan, and so once in a while on the street, I would get, be excellent.
Excellent!
And party on.
And so many people now, they scream, Keanu, Keanu, but at one point, they wanted you to change your name.
Yes, they did, sir.
And did you ever consider?
Okay, so I'm 20 years old. I'm in my first car. I wanted to be in movies, went to Hollywood. And I get there, and they're like, we want to change your name. I was like, why? And they were like, well, Keanu, maybe it's a little too exotic. We don't want to, And so, yeah, I did.
What were some of the other names
like
suggested?
Chuck Spadina. They just came up with ridiculous names. I just actually couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
I'm happy you didn't.
Yeah, me too.
What made you know it was the right time to do another film?
Really came from the writer, director, visionary Lana Wachowski. When she called, and I was like, well, what's up? And she's like, well, I'm thinking of doing another Matrix. And I was like, what?
And one of the fans' favorite parts of the trailer is when your character says,
I still know Kung Fu.
And we know you learned martial arts for the trilogy.
Yeah. Movie martial art.
Movie, okay. Movie martial
Yeah,
art. So how much time did that take? How much did you have to train for that?
On the original, it was about 3 months. And on Resurrections, we did, I want to say it was at least 10 weeks. And then we had training to jump off the building.
You did it?
Yeah, we did.
How many stories?
It was about 44, and then you had to walk up a couple of stories.
No, I'm not worried about the walking up. You jumped?
Yeah, the leap that we take in the film.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no CGI in that. That's real.
Carrie Ann Moss.
I wasn't sure I'd see you again.
How was it to work with her again?
Really amazing. The performance that she gives at the top of that building, I don't want to give too much away, but like, I'm gonna cry. But it was like, I got to see that up close, to see her strength and stuff, and it was cool to be there.
You're allowed to cry. I do it. Don't worry.
We can't go back. We won't. You know, like this is might be the last time again. You know? So I'm trying to take it in.
And with some candy, we asked the question on everyone's mind. Which one would you take?
You know, it gets harder and harder as I get older to take that red pill.
Because you like your life. You love your life.
Yeah. But if I know there's a matrix, I'm still gonna eat a red pill.
Our thanks to Keanu Reeves and Michael Strahan for that. Chances are, if you have listened to a rap or pop station today, you have heard some Afrobeat songs. The genre exported from Africa is now burning up the charts, but some of the songs now popular came out months or even years ago. ABC's Faith Abube takes a closer look at how social media is making the old new, exposing Americans to music that people in other countries have been enjoying for quite some time.
Little Love, or Love Nwantiti, becoming a soundtrack for millions of TikTokers and Instagrammers.
My baby, my Valentine. Can I hit the making with temperature days? If you leave me a good time, I swear. You are like the oxygen I need to survive.
The words, a mix of Pidgin English and Igbo. Finding glory on radio stations across America 2 years after Nigerian artist CK first released it.
Social media was the place where lots of people from different parts of the world discovered this song. On YouTube, I see lots of comments saying, I've been searching for this song for 3 months, but I didn't know the name. I just found it, thank God.
2 remixes have remained on the global Shazam chart for weeks now.
If you leave me a good time, I swear.
CK's decision to incorporate his native tongue, resonating with Americans now suddenly listening to hits in Spanish, Korean, and Igbo.
I was literally just being authentic and true to myself, and everyone connected with that in the original language.
Afrobeats, an African medley of R&B, pop, and hip-hop, being pumped out of megacities like Lagos, has had millions of fans for years, but now it's becoming globally recognized. Wizkid, Angelique Kidjo, Burna Boy, and Femi Kuti among this year's Grammy nominees. Femi, the eldest son of the late Fela Kuti, the first major African artist to cross over. He's known as the godfather of Afrobeat. Luz Diaz, an African soul and funk originating in the 1960s.
All the problems, all the things we think.
His Yoruba vocal style and powerful performances, the theme music for political activism and revolution during a turbulent time.
Some have decided that Afrobeat without an S, singular, is designated to Fela in that generation. That this new sound is called Afrobeats. The people who argue that differentiation do pay homage to, the previous sound and the influence of the sound.
This generation's interpretation of the sound varies from the different perspectives within the African diaspora.
Joanna.
In 2018, Ivorian Brit singer and DJ Afrobeat popularized the Afrowave genre in London after his hit song Joanna, also known as Drogba.
The main aim for Afrowave is to connect Africans, African Americans, the Caribbeans, everyone to their roots, so all the diaspora, to connect them together.
The current global smash hit Essence helping bring even more fans, elevating artists Wizkid and Tams. Tams, known for her own hits like Damages.
Is there something specifically about Afrobeats that you think is resonating with people?
I think African music in general is very spiritual. It makes you feel, it makes you want to do something when you listen to any type of African music, whether it's Afrobeat, house, R&B, or Afro soul. Whatever you're listening to, African music is very touching to the soul and to the body. It just makes you want to move and do something. And I can't say what that ingredient is. I just think it's in the blood, maybe.
Essence became so popular that when Justin Bieber showed up on a remix, many in the diaspora were outraged, playing Off the Hook, saying the song did not need no other body. But Western stars are increasingly tapping into Afrobeat's popularity. Beyonce's visual album, Black is King, featured African artists across the continent.
I can't talk for too long, got too much go to try on.
Her songs, like Don't Jealous Me, featured in Black is King, combines the artistry from Afro-pop, Benku, reggae, and hip-hop musicians.
People in the diaspora were able to connect to these visuals and the sound and knowing where it's from and doing more research after the Black is King project because, you know, we had a collective voice of creatives who were all promoting at the same time, and that you don't see often. And it actually had so much more. It was bigger than just the music. Black is King was an excellent catalyst to put in spotlight on just the entire ecosystem of the African industry.
Concert promoters now bringing the music from these African nations to nations like Britain and Portugal that once colonized them. America has been the chief exporter of global pop for decades, but it's a bit late to the Afrobeats game.
As Black people, we've always known that Black culture, Black people are not a monolith. And the rise of Afrobeat is really surfacing all the different diverse experiences.
Afrobeats music made its festival debut in the U.S. this past October after musicians from across the globe came to Sacramento, California for Lost in Rhythm, which drew thousands of music lovers. Thames was one of the performers at the festival.
What does the spotlight on African artists mean to you?
Africa has never been so lit as it is right now. There's like this bright light coming out of Africa, and I'm just really honored to be African. I'm honored to be Nigerian. I'm honored to be a part of something that is bigger than me. And yeah, it means a lot, not just for me, but for all Africans and for all people of African descent. It's a huge milestone.
I think Afrobeats is the new pop. Pop music is popular music. It's music that everyone loves, right? It's like jollof rice. Jollof rice is a Nigerian food that everyone loves. Afrobeats is a genre that is amazing and people deserve to hear it. Afrobeats is, I would say, is my heritage as an African. It's literally part of my blood.
Faith Abube, ABC News, Washington.
Our thanks to Faith for that. And before we go tonight, the image of the day. Young people in Kabul, Afghanistan, taking a break from some of the tough pressures of daily life there to enjoy the first snowfall of this winter season. That is our show for this hour. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Coming up in the next hour, we're keeping an eye on the severe storm threat marching east. And our friend anchor Diane Macedo joins us with some secrets we all need about how to sleep better.
More Americans choose ABC News, America's #1 news source. This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back.
We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
Seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know,
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it? Feel smarter,
feel better.
feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
The ladies you love, the hottest topics happening now. There's only one place to find it all.
You guys are having the hard conversations. I love The View.
The most watched #1 daytime talk show is The View. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It was a scary time. In the 70s, you had multiple bodies showing up in Los Angeles.
There were so many murders happening. You had to have a name for it, serial killer.
There was a human head in there.
This was premeditated evil.
We have this clock. This person is going to do this again.
It's me against the killer. Who's going to win?
We'll see who laughs last.
What came next was unlike anything they had ever seen.
ABC News honored winner of 9 Edward R. Murrow Awards, more than any other network, including winning for the 3rd straight year the award for overall excellence in television. ABC News is America's #1 news source. With so much at stake, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 newscast and the #1 program on television.
Hi there, I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We're monitoring several developments here at ABC News at this hour. San Jose police announced the arrest of 6 men who allegedly committed dozens of robberies, burglaries, and thefts that often targeted people of Asian descent. Police say more than 100 women were impacted. Police decided to charge the offenders with hate crimes because of some of the awful slurs they used and how they targeted their victims. Former Minneapolis police officer Derek Shovin has pleaded guilty to violating George Floyd's civil rights. He did so as part of a plea deal. He's already serving 22.5 years for state charges related to Floyd's death. Floyd's loved ones outside of court said today's plea means accountability, but that they will never have justice. And Super Bowl 58 has been awarded to Las Vegas. The game will take place in February 2024. But we begin this hour tracking a wave of dangerous weather making its way east. There have been tornado watches throughout the day. Take a look at this line of severe storms. This comes as parts of the West were pummeled, as ABC's Morgan Norwood reports.
After slamming the West Coast with everything from heavy rain, wind, and snow, this massive storm system now marching across the country. The system fueled by an atmospheric river breaking several daily records across California. The torrential downpours triggering mudslides in Silverado Canyon, sending dirt and debris racing downhill.
Major mud flow.
Crews scrambling to restore access to mud-blanketed roads, heavy machinery clearing rocks and sludge.
The mud and the debris comes down from these burn scar areas very quickly, and it's treacherous, and firefighters cannot always get up into those areas, and you may be left on your own.
In Orange County, flash flooding threatening homes, firefighters seen pumping out water. And in Monrovia, residents fending off major mud flow with gravel and bags.
We've seen some mud flow and debris in our canyon park, which we've closed the canyon park indefinitely until rainflow lets up.
This same system dumping feet of snow in California's mountains. This tractor trailer immobilized, blocking the road. The Mammoth Mountain ski area barely visible after picking up 27 inches of snowfall. The accumulation, a skier's paradise in Walnut Creek.
It's been so long since California's had good snow, so we're just super excited to be able to go to Tahoe and not ski on man-made snow.
Our thanks to Morgan. Earlier today, President Biden toured some of the hardest hit areas from last Friday's horrific tornado outbreak that has killed at least 88 people in 9 states. Elwin Lopez has more on the visit and the cleanup effort in Kentucky from what we're now learning was an F4 tornado, translation, one of the strongest types of storms on this planet.
Tonight, with this region bracing for heavy rain on the way, President Biden on the ground in Kentucky, surveying the damage in Mayfield and Dawson Springs, meeting with families saying he's never seen destruction like this. More than 70 lives lost in the state. The governor breaking down as he introduced the president.
And I never thought in my life I'd be able to introduce a president, and I wish there were different circumstances.
And the president acknowledging the pain and suffering in the community.
I met
One couple on the way up said they're still looking for 4 of their friends. They don't know where they are. And those who lost someone, there's no words for the pain of losing someone. A lot of us know it.
Announcing the federal government will cover 100% of the cost of all emergency work for the next 30 days.
To all the families here, keep the faith. We're going to get this done. I promise you, no one's walking away. We're in this for the long haul.
Comforter-in-Chief there. Our thanks to Elwin. Now to our nation's tug of war with COVID. Today, Dr. Fauci tried to strike a calming tone about the power of vaccines against Omicron, but hospitalizations continue to climb and tens of thousands more are expected to die in the coming weeks. ABC's Stephanie Ramos has this report.
With the Omicron variant now racing across the U.S., Dr. Anthony Fauci today trying to reassure Americans that we already have the weapon to fight it.
Our booster vaccine regimens work against Omicron. At this point, there is no need for a variant-specific booster.
Dr. Fauci pointing to new research on the power of boosters. Lab studies of Pfizer and Moderna vaccines show Omicron significantly reduces antibody protection after just 2 doses, but a 3rd dose restores high levels of antibodies. The White House COVID team asked today how worried Americans should be about Omicron.
If we didn't have these tools, I would be telling you to really, really be worried. But we have tools. So get vaccinated, get boosted.
The Omicron variant detected in at least 36 states now makes up about 3% of cases nationwide, and as much as 13% in New York, New Jersey, and Washington state, where cases are doubling every day, pushing some people to get that shot.
I'm going to go ahead and get vaccinated. I think it's especially with the variant.
The number of COVID cases at Cornell University, now more than 900. Many thought to be Omicron, pushing that college and others like Princeton and NYU to move final exams online. And even if Omicron is not more severe, as early data suggests, experts worry a spike in infections will send more people into hospitals that are already under siege. With reported outbreaks among vaccinated college students, doctors at New York's Long Island Jewish Medical Center are bracing for more of a spike in cases.
What are some of your concerns going into winter?
As people now are gathering for the holidays and being inside, these new variants spread very easily. We know they're very contagious, much more contagious than Delta even. We know that there are lots of super spreader events in colleges right now that are happening. So all those college kids are going to come home and spread COVID to their families.
It comes as more than 100 athletes across professional football, basketball, and hockey teams tested positive this week for COVID or were exposed. More than 70 NFL players alone, including Cleveland Browns quarterback Baker Mayfield, along with his head coach, and LA Rams wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr.
There's been a substantial increase in our positive cases over the past several days. And I think this reflects that we're entering a new phase of the pandemic.
Next to the documentary that's taking an in-depth look at the case against a former Navy SEAL accused of committing war crimes by members of his own platoon. You might remember Eddie Gallagher came to national attention back in 2018 after he was charged with fatally stabbing a 15-year-old ISIS prisoner in Iraq and then photographed himself with the corpse. He was convicted by the military of posing for a picture with the body, but was acquitted of all other charges after a team member testified that he killed the prisoner, not Gallagher. Several Navy SEALs remain adamant Gallagher is guilty of murder on multiple occasions during their deployment. Let's take a listen.
There was a shot taken, and I saw the girl in the gray dress grab her stomach. And the girl in the blue dress grabs her arm, and she looks right at our position. Later that day, I was walking to the house with my ruck on. Joe Arrington was in front of me, and I was like, "Man, Joe, I saw a little girl get shot today under the bridge." And he turns around, he looks me square in the eye, says, "That was Eddie. Eddie told me he shot those girls today." And my jaw just dropped, and I was like, "You gotta be kidding me."
Like, I stand behind every shot that I took. I sleep fine at night. It seems that if we play by the rules that are given to us, we're not gonna even come close to winning. You have to get your hands dirty a little bit to win. If I did stab, no, I don't think I did anything wrong. Even if I had taken a knife out and stabbed him, I don't think I should not be on trial for murder for killing an ISIS terrorist.
Really compelling stuff there. Director Doug Schultz joins us now to unpack the blurred lines between right and wrong detailed in the film. Doug, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Give us a sense of some of the biggest revelations after your interviews with members of the SEAL Team 7.
I think one of the biggest things for me was just the environment that they were living in. You know, these guys are packed into a very small house, going out every day, and they're just surrounded by bodies on the street. That's one of the things that everyone talked about. And so to imagine being in the mindset of one of these guys, trying to come to terms with whether what they're seeing is right or wrong, you can imagine that would be a very difficult thing to process. It might take longer than the average person, just because you're so used to seeing death on such a large scale, that coming to the realization that this is wrong and I'm going to go up against the system to try to report this had to be an incredibly difficult decision to make.
After all of the interrogations and interviews, it seems like the details still kind of remain foggy in this case.
They're very foggy, to say the least. You know, we have thousands of pages of evidence, video depositions from the majority of the platoon. Not everyone's stories align. We know more or less what happened on a couple of the days where there's video evidence and things like that, but the details contradict each other. And so, you know, the jury made its decision, and a lot of the guys who came forward were let down by that decision. But they've moved on, and I'm not sure we're ever going to really know the facts behind what exactly happened.
What would you hope that Navy SEALs and military personnel would take away from the events that happened?
Well, I think the biggest thing is just the effect that this is going to have on the younger guys and younger women coming into the pipeline when they're confronted with a situation where there's poor leadership or they see something that they believe is wrong. Are they going to have the courage to come forward and report it? Having seen what these guys went through, you know, a lot of the guys who did the initial reporting and testified in this case against Eddie Gallagher, they really they faced a lot of consequences in their personal lives, their reputation, their careers were at stake, and in the end, they didn't get a conviction. So it really is going to have an effect, I think, on the next generation of SEALs and the next generation of service members.
In your estimation, does the Pentagon really need to revisit the protocol with regard to soldiers and the actions taken by their superiors?
The protocol in what sense? In the reporting structure?
Yes.
There is a very solid reporting structure in place. However, in this case, the people that the SEALs were reporting were directly above them in the chain of command, and I think that's where the problem was. And when they skipped Eddie Gallagher, who was the chief, and they went to the officer in charge, he didn't report it either, according to these guys. And so the further they went up, the more things got pushed back down to them. And so I don't know how you fix a system like that, but in this case, the reporting up the chain of the command system didn't work for these guys.
Why do you think in particular now, perhaps even more than ever before, examining that brotherhood of the military is so important?
Boy, you know, that was, for me, I think the biggest story is the brotherhood of these guys, you know, being able to experience through their own footage and their own words, the bonds that they formed during this deployment, and then how those bonds were tested and fractured as a result of how things went with the investigation and the ensuing trial. And I think that, you know, it really highlighted a division in the country over how there are these two schools of thought of how we fight war. There's one side that thinks you don't question the military, we go out and do what's necessary and you don't ask questions. And then there are people who think we are the global leader, we need to adhere to the rules of warfare laid out in the Geneva Conventions. And I think that's really the big takeaway, is that there is this divide, and how do we reconcile that as a country?
And speaking of takeaways, what would you like the average viewer to come away from this?
I think I would like the average viewer to come away with a feeling of having gone on a pretty wild ride. It's a crazy story full of twists and turns. It's an experience you never get to see, to be on deployment with a team of Navy SEALs whose job is to be invisible. So it's a pretty extraordinary opportunity. as a viewer and as a filmmaker. And then in the end, you know, one of the journalists that we interviewed referred to the case as a Rorschach test, that people see what they want to see. If you think that Eddie Gallagher's a hero, are you going to feel that way? Yeah.
Doug Schultz, we thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
The Line is currently streaming on Apple TV+. And still to come, the gingerbread houses that you have to see to believe.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any place else. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast, now streaming on ABC News Live.
It was a scary time. In the 70s, you had multiple bodies showing up in Los Angeles.
There were so many murders happening. You had to have a name for it, serial killer.
There was a human head in there. This was premeditated evil.
We have this clock. This person is going to do this again.
It's me against the killer. Who's going to win?
We'll see who laughs last.
What came next was unlike anything they had ever seen.
Admit it, these days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
I risked my life. I put my family in danger. If I was caught, they would have put a bullet in my head. But it was the right thing to do. It was the only thing to do.
Terror plot foiled in Garden City, Kansas.
That would have been one of the most deadly acts of domestic terrorism ever in the United States. It would have been Oklahoma City.
He put his family, himself, in jeopardy for us.
24 hours, assault on the Capitol. The ABC News original, exclusively on Hulu. Now streaming. This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back.
We're surrounded by people
squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
National parks are incredibly safe places, but crime will happen.
Hey, Mama. My wife is fallen. She's in really critical condition.
At that time, I thought it was just a tragic accident.
There's still a lot of questions we need to ask.
There were small things that didn't totally add up.
This is 2 lives for Harold that have died now. I was shocked. Something's not right.
Welcome back. We're tracking several headlines around the world. Climate change is now impacting the cultivation of olives. Damaged olive trees seen throughout Greece, which is the world's 3rd biggest producer of olive oil. The crop shortage is a result of Europe's hottest summer on record. Greek farmers are concerned they will not be able to meet the demand of what they call green gold. Firefighters stood on aerial lifts during a rescue operation after a fire broke out in Hong Kong's World Trade Center. About 150 people were trapped on the roof of the building located in the bustling commercial and shopping district of Causeway Bay. According to police, at least 8 people were taken to the hospital. Australia reopened its border to vaccinated skilled migrants and students after a ban that lasted almost 2 years. Travelers hugged and held family members and friends at the Sydney airport. The land down under did so in the hopes of boosting the economy hit hard by lockdowns. Joining us now is our own ABC News Live Dayside anchor and now the author of a new book, The Sleep Fix, where she provides easy and practical solutions to fix your sleep struggles once and for all. Miss Diane Macedo, it is so good to see you again back in the studio. You're looking so restful, like you're actually getting good night's sleep.
Is that so?
Even though we do want to show your little girl, right? Because I imagine this is your 2nd child. I imagine having a newborn even though I'm sure you're not really asleep in that picture, but it looks like you're getting a lot of sleep. How is that with working with your sleep habits?
The irony of releasing a sleep book when you have an infant is nobody is rested during this stage. But the difference is if I'm not sleeping now at night, it's usually because my baby needs me, not because I'm laying in bed staring at the ceiling and I can't sleep.
And it's good to have that actual practical rationale and explanation. But I know that this came from your own struggles, your own personal journey with having a difficult time falling asleep. Kind of give us a sense of that.
It sure did. So for years, I had difficulty falling asleep and staying asleep. And for a while, I just kind of dismissed it as, oh, well, that's just me. That's just how I am. I'm a bad sleeper. But eventually it got so bad, I really couldn't ignore it anymore. So I started trying all the typical sleep tips that you read about in articles all the time, and none of it worked for me. In fact, I felt like I kept getting worse and worse. Eventually, I started on Ambien at the encouragement of my doctor. And for a while, that was like magic. And then eventually that stopped working too. And that was kind of the wake-up call for me, where my doctor just said, you can just take more Ambien if you want. But I decided that's not the path for me. So I kind of turned into a sleep nerd. I started reading all of these sleep textbooks, books written by clinicians who actually treat people with sleep problems. And putting that stuff into practice, I started sleeping better on the overnight shift in only 3 weeks. And so I just kind of thought, well, why isn't anybody talking about this stuff? And then that sent me down a whole sleep rabbit hole where I explored lots of other issues, talked to experts all over sleep science, and ended up putting it all together like this big sleep puzzle. And that's essentially what the sleep fix is.
And I don't think that I even need to ask this question because I personally struggle prior to reading the book, that, by the way, and months before, as you know, we were talking because when I knew you had this book coming up, I just started asking you for all of the tips. But for our viewers at home, explain what some of the common habits are that lead to people having such a difficult time falling asleep.
So I think there's a misconception that if someone has trouble sleeping, they must have really bad sleep habits. And often the clinicians that I speak to say their typical insomnia patient is the opposite. It's someone who comes in and says, I have no idea why I'm not sleeping. I quit caffeine, I'm doing the teas, I'm taking baths at night, I see no screens at all within 3 hours of bed, et cetera, et cetera. And these doctors tell me that when they hear that, it's a red flag, and they cannot say with almost certainty that person has insomnia. Because even though these things are individually good for sleep, if you try them all, and if those things make you think a lot and worry a lot about your sleep, they can actually make your sleep worse. And this often comes into play in the bedtime routine leading up to bed, where we do all these things we feel we're supposed to do instead of doing things we enjoy. And so even if those things individually, in theory, are good for sleep, if you're doing them solely because I feel like I have to do this and now let's see if I sleep, it puts your brain into work mode and now you're all revved up and you can't sleep. So sometimes it's really about stepping back and choosing the right sleep solutions to focus on and kind of letting the rest go away. If you used to sleep fine when you just watch TV and go to bed, go back to watching TV. TV is not the problem.
And we talk about the overactive mind quite often, right? But in your book, you mentioned constructive worrying. Explain what that is.
So I also call this a worry list or a brain dump, but it's a simple exercise involving a notebook and great for that feeling when you go to bed and you feel like your thoughts are just racing. Take a notebook, divide a page down the center. On the left-hand side, you write down all of your worries, your thoughts, anything that's on your mind. On the right-hand side, you write down just the very next step to resolving that issue. You don't even have to know the ultimate solution. You can just write, call Lindsay about X because I know you know more about that than I do, or research it, or accept and move on if it's something that's out of your control. And when you can't think of anything else that's on your mind, you're done. And what this does is it gives your brain an opportunity to process those thoughts and feelings and worries from the day so that you don't have to do it in bed. So bed is not the only option to process those feelings. And if you do this enough, your brain starts to form a new association that, oh, this is where we stay awake and worry, not when my head hits the pillow. Because often, if you have insomnia for long enough, your bed becomes a cue for wakefulness. And this exercise helps to separate that. And I felt like I did it for about 2 weeks, and I did not need the notebook anymore. And what clinicians told me that I interviewed for the book was that they generally say 2 to 3 weeks to their patients, and your brain just kind of starts doing it automatically, and then you don't even need the notebook. Your brain just kind of gets the memo. Head on pillow means it's time to sleep, not it's time to think about everything.
And so you can essentially retrain your mind, which is good to know that that is an option. And then you also talk a lot about kind of debunking these certain myths, the idea of carbs being bad, right? Or reading on your iPad. Or a lot of times people, and this is something that I would do, I'd fall asleep and I felt like I have to stay in bed. right?
Yes.
But you suggest just if you're awake, get out of bed and do something else.
I feel like that should be the golden rule. If you find yourself in bed long enough to feel frustrated, get out of bed, do something enjoyable and relaxing, and go back to bed when you feel sleepy again. And I say enjoyable because a lot of times you'll hear things like read an instruction manual or do something really boring. But boring things can also foster frustration. And so even if it works in the moment, now you have something else to fear when you go to bed and you think, oh gosh, I really hope I don't wake up this time or I'm gonna have to read that damn manual again. And so do something enjoyable, relaxing, and that helps wakefulness become less of a threat if you learn to enjoy your wake time. And that means when you do wake up at night, you're now not all hyped up because so much of what fuels our insomnia is our flight response. It's our fear of being awake. And if you can do anything you can do to sort of overcome that, helps to move insomnia in the right direction, where you start sleeping better and better, you develop more sleep confidence, and that then makes you sleep better and better. And you can reverse what feels like a downward spiral starts to turn in the opposite direction. Sleep improvement begets sleep improvement.
Well, Diane, we thank you on behalf of insomniacs like myself, because, you know, a lot of times people want a book, right, for it's enjoyable, it's a novel, but this is something that I feel, and I don't want to oversell, but that people need, people are going to find, oh my goodness, at long last, I can get some rest and some sleep. So thank you for that. The Sleep Fix is now available wherever books are sold. And finally tonight, one woman's epic candy creation. She's using blueprints from original buildings to create intricate gingerbread houses. Here's ABC's Will Gantz.
Buddy the Elf's not the only one working overtime this time of year.
The Shake Shack took me about 50 hours in total, and I would say that's probably about the same for the cottage, and Rosebud probably took more than that because it was just so much bigger.
I mean, that's a full work week. Like,
yeah, I was doing it like nights, weekends.
By day, Natalie Salerno works in marketing, but her holiday hustle, making gingerbread recreations of your favorite real-life buildings, like the cottage from Nancy Meyers' The Holiday.
Nancy Meyers DM'd me after The Holiday, and I died a little bit.
Natalie leaning into her sugary sweet skill set during the pandemic, quickly taking on gingerbread construction jobs on a much larger scale, like the Rosebud Motel from this show. But she's making it look easy with her latest cookie creation, a miniature version of the first ever Shake Shack.
Give me 1 second. I have cookies in the oven, and that's like not a joke.
Okay, of course.
I need to take them out. I promise I didn't stage that.
With fresh baked cookies on the brain, we had to ask.
Are you able to eat anything that you make?
I don't, but you can. It keeps me from being too precious about things because at the end of the day, like something could be going wrong and I have to remind myself, this is a cookie, like it's okay. Everything will be okay. It is not going to last forever. And there's something kind of beautiful about that.
Beautiful and sweet. That is our show for tonight. Stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Have a great night.
It was an extraordinary story.
A computer salesman was supposed